You ever heard someone tell you that they're so OCD about something? Now, this could be they want their books organized in alphabetical order, they want their clothes and ordered by color. It's kind of just a saying to say that these people are nice and tidy, or they want to be nice and tidy. They like to be organized. Well, obsessive compulsive disorder is anxiety driven, and it comes in three parts: your obsessions and compulsions, and how you deal with those, the whole shebang. And it's not really uncommon to have. So, according to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, about 1% of the population, or 2.2 million people, have it in America. Now, this brings me to my first point: the obsessions. Now, according to Monica Wu from the Journal of Clinical Psychology, in November of 2016, obsessions are the fear of action on unwanted impulses. So, people with OCD have these thoughts that pop into their head that they are doing something, a bad task, or say, for example, robbing a bank or murdering somebody, and they get scared of this thought, so they try to kick it out of their head, which brings more attention to that, and it kind of recycles through their brain. Now, Monica Wu also says that the nature of these thoughts is usually disturbing in the sense that the children think they arise from a moral component of their character. So kids' brains aren't fully developed yet, and they think that these thoughts stem from who they are, and they think that they are murderers, or they think that they are robbers, when in reality it's just a chemical imbalance in their brain, and they're actually, it's quite the opposite. They really strongly believe that they are not, and since they believe that they're not, they attach meaning to these thoughts, and it keeps replaying in their head. So it brings them anxiety, and they can't really tell the difference because their brains aren't developed yet. Now, Isaac Fradkin from PLOS Computation Biology in February 2020 gives a good example about a wallet. He says that any normal person would think this: you have a bag with a hole in it, and you put your wallet in there. Any normal person would, or any person at all, would kind of check the bag temporarily throughout the day to see if the wallet fell out. He compares that to someone of OCD. Now, someone with OCD would check something over the smallest things. They would check their fridge to see if they saw the same number of drinks in there in fear that their house is going to burn down. They're two totally unrelated ideas. Now, this brings me to our next point. Compulsions are behaviors or rituals that you feel driven to act out again and again. Usually, compulsions are performed in an attempt to make obsessions go away. Now, this comes from Melinda Smith, a medical assistant, in October of 2019. The relief from the compulsions never lasts, and they come back even stronger. So these people are performing these tasks to get rid of the obsessions. Now, it's only temporary relief. So say you have a thought about murdering somebody, and you totally don't want that. So you kind of tap your finger maybe on the wall, or you kind of scratch your chin to try to mitigate the fear of, or the thought of you murdering your neighbor. And it just comes back stronger. And this is what they're trying to say. Compulsions have no subject relation. They do the compulsion to undo the consequences of the intrusive thought. And they don't even have to be physical. Now, this comes from Adam David, April 2014. He's a scientist and author of Prisoners of Thought. Now, some people would say that, organizing your books would be kind of a physical compulsion. They don't even have to be physical. Some people could, if, say, we'll go back to the robbing example. Say you have a fear of robbing the bank when you walk near the bank. Now, a person with OCD would kind of they would count numbers in their head, or count corners of something to try to get rid of that thought as they're passing by that. And it just doesn't work. Like, sometimes it's hard to diagnose OCD when it's not physical compulsions. Well, this brings me to my third point. OCD is chronic, but can be treated for both mental and physical compulsions. Now, usually the type of treatment that comes along with this is exposure. Now, here is kind of a quote from Stephen P. Whiteside, the author of Exposure Therapy for Child and Adolescent Anxiety and OCD, in January 2020. This is kind of a line from his book that really illustrates kind of what the exposure is. it goes, what is exposure? It is the therapeutic value of confronting rather than avoiding difficult emotions and issues. Now, it's kind of like, I will give a personal example of my fear of fireworks. Say I wanted to get over my fear of fireworks. Instead of staying inside and being scared all night, I would expose myself to going outside and listening to the loud booms of fireworks and get my mental stimulus down, or my fear down. Trying to confront your fear shows you that it is not a big thing. That this thing that you're scared of is not big. Now, imaginal exposure involves, now there's another kind of exposure where you imagine the situation that you're in that you think is bad. So you're walking to the bank and you imagine robbing the bank. Now, this is another kind of exposure that says that maybe doing the task wouldn't be so bad, which wouldn't really work in that extreme example I gave. But imaginal exposure involves patients vividly imagining themselves in the situation they fear, situations that evoke their urges to perform rituals, and the negative consequences that they fear will happen because they refrain from ritualizing. Now, this comes from Edna B. Foa, who wrote Exposure and Response Prevention for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder in 2012. But yes, imaginal exposure does work in certain situations because you're exposing yourself to actually doing the task and not avoiding it, so it wouldn't keep coming back. Your brain would be tricked into saying, okay, that thought's been thought and it can pass. Now, I think this all relates to the pillar of community engagement, because instead of kind of focusing on what a normal person would think about OCD, it's kind of giving a actual scientific perspective. And I think that would kind of fall under community engagement, because it's kind of busting the idea that OCD is not just keeping things in order, and it's not just wanting to be neat. Well, hopefully you learned some today, and have a good day.